Olá, pessoal. Bom dia. Seguimos aqui no estúdio Galeria 42, com transmissão da ClapMe. Vamos dar sequência aqui ao nosso terceiro painel do dia. Também vai ser falado em inglês. Hello, Kito.
Hello, Mariana.
Good morning. Our next panel is going to be music for advertising. Kito is our mediator. He is managing partner and founder at Untitled Audio. We also have here Pete Beck, global head of Sync Believe UK. And we also have Wilson Brown, executive creative director and partner ANTFOOD US. Kito, gonna leave this talk with you.
Thanks, Mariana.
Hello, guys.
Hi, guys. Thank you for joining us here. It's a pleasure to share this presentation with you. And I would like to make a brief introduction from you. Then I'll leave you guys to introduce yourselves and show your company's clips. So first we have Pete Beck from Believe Sync. I want you to introduce yourself and say a few words from us, and then we're going to show your clip.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm Pete. I'm the global head of Sync for Believe. Believe, for those of you who don't know, we're a Paris-based independent distribution and artist services business. We have offices all around the world. We work with hundreds of thousands of independent artists, and my role here is to look after the sync business for all of those guys in the various different guises. That's it, I guess. I mean, we can get more into detail later on.
Cool. We're gonna show the clip number 1 from Believe Sync. Then we're gonna talk to Wilson. Okay. So, vídeo número 1.
This guy with an eye is
the grace of freedom, the warmth of our laughter.
So do you use the power in your hands to destroy?
Quand tu courais, c'était toujours un peu en baleine.
Trop bien.
Regarde-toi sur ton bac. Pas perdu, tes pieds te retenaient comme une
that has shown us, if we choose, we can transform the health of the planet. For all.
Alpine Formula One team.
There you go. Cool work. Congrats, man. Amazing work on Diverse. Now we're gonna introduce Wilson. Hi, Wilson. How do you do, man? Wilson Brown
Fala,
from...
Kito. How are you?
Yeah, you speak a little bit Portuguese, don't you?
Sim, eu falo. Eu,
Yeah.
eu trabalhava em São Paulo, né? A gente tem estúdio lá também.
See, so we have Wilson Brown here from ANTFOOD, and he's gonna introduce himself, and then after we're gonna see his clip.
Hi all, thanks for having me here. I'm Wilson Brown. I'm the Executive Creative Director and a founding partner of ANTFOOD. We have offices here in New York, where I'm based. We have a studio in São Paulo. We have an office in Amsterdam and a little satellite in Los Angeles. And we do all kinds of things in under the umbrella of creative audio. We create original music, do sound design. We do a lot of experiential work in creative tech and sonic branding for some of the greatest and nicest brands in the world. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and talk to Pete. And you too, Kito. It's been a while.
Cool. Now we're gonna see ANTFOOD clip.
ANTFOOD is a studio and production company working in music, sound, and audio design. We have worked tirelessly to build a living, breathing machine where creativity flows effortlessly, with the systems and infrastructure to execute at scale. Our talented team of creatives, producers, and sound designers work from the ground up, understanding the intricacies and the impact of music and sound. We build equipment from the circuit up. We develop software to push the boundaries of what is possible through sound. And we understand how voltage, bits, and the density of air molecules can be manipulated to make us feel something meaningful. We work with our minds, our hands, and the most essential instruments, equipment, and techniques in a long history of sound creation. ANTFOOD composes award-winning music for linear media. Through sound, we convey mood and message for advertising, film, marketing, and product. We are pioneering creative solutions for experiential media, from extended realities to large-scale installations. We're paving a path for nonlinear composition, spatial sound, and reactive, generative musical environments that accompany a new phase of media consumption. For sonic identity and branded audio systems, we apply the rigor of our processes while leaving strategic openings for inspiration to strike, offering brands vision, value, and results as their sonic identities go out into the world. Our work conveys and elicits emotion while never losing sight of function. It touches millions of people daily in a subtle yet impactful way. We are cooks, philosophers, artists, and pragmatists, and we make robots who can rap. We love what we do, and we bring this passion to every project. ANTFOOD, the creative audio studio.
Yeah, amazing work from ANTFOOD as well. Good to have you guys here. I like to just throw conversation here with you guys here, and one thing that we could start over this conversation is in what point do you think, guys, are the music business, after all this turmoil from the COVID and pandemic, how do you feel that that changed or affected your business or the way that you work? Whenever you feel to answering, you guys just come in. It's just a question for both of you.
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to go. I mean, I think last year was super challenging for lots of different reasons. The main reason that I think sort of passed a lot of people by when the world started locking down was, what that means to productions. It was everybody in the music industry was thinking, oh great, streaming is going to save us all. The live industry is screwed, but everyone else is okay. And of course nobody was thinking, well, what are our production partners going through? And so we had a really tough couple of months in the summer of 2020. But to be totally honest, since then, it's kind of been on an upward curve again for us. Once everybody figured out how to film things in a COVID safe way. What we've actually seen is a lot of work coming in very, very quickly. Certainly on the film and TV side, you know, everybody's doing kind of 3 years worth of productions in 18 months. So we're crazy busy. And you know, one of the positives, Wilson and I were just chatting about this just before we started, is that, you know, we can connect with people online now in a way that you know, would have been much harder to do previously. So for businesses like Believe, where we're aggressively moving into new territories and new markets that we haven't been a part of soon, I take that as a real positive. It's really easy for us to make connections with people on the other side of the world, and start to bring the business forward in a different way. The downside is that you know, I don't get to leave London.
In a sense, it makes easier to connect with people that otherwise you will have to reach them physically. Now you can reach them virtually, and it broadens your casting. That's it.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think beyond that, you know, it even sort of like levels the playing field, right? In a moment where we're all just, you know, doing this. I guess in another world, you know, I would be in Sao Paulo on a stage with all of you in person, which I would love to do. It would be great. But I think in terms of, you know, just thinking about pre-production meetings, client presentations, that type of work, there was a quick adjustment. But I think the sort of cadence and camaraderie that we've developed over the past nearly 2 years, working with clients all over the globe in these little, you know, squares and boxes, I think has changed the way that we communicate the value of our work, right? I think Pete and I both trade in an somewhat abstract art form, right? Everybody loves music. Many people are hobbyists or played in a band in high school or DJ'd their cousins' weddings. But the act of, you know, finding the right music, creating the right music, crafting, you know, sort of altering the music for a production that can be like meaningful and really make a difference, move people, and provide value for the end client's goals, I think is a bit of you know, there's a bit of myth and magic to it that we both suffer from, and we take advantage of as well in our industry. But I think the ability to be able to like talk people through it rather than you know, just saying here 10 tracks, you know, pick your favorite for, you know, one CMO or one, you know, creative director or something, I think has been nice. And I hope we'll go back, you know, to a more casual and social setting in terms of meetings. But I do think there are positives that we learn from, you know, this way of doing business.
I guess that probably we're gonna turn into a hybrid mode, a little bit working from home and part of it presential. At least that's my thought perspective here in Brazil. Do you guys feel the same? That will happen with you there?
Definitely.
Definitely here. I mean, yeah, and in Brazil and Amsterdam too. I think, you know, we've constructed our model to build out, you know, beautiful sort of old-timey studios. I've got a Neve console behind me that feels kind of sad when we don't have the full, you know, studio of everyone utilizing it. But like this is maybe for the, you know, audio nerds out there. But I'm really interested in like figuring out what the next model, right? We own a building here. We've purpose built it. We have a long-term plan of how to make, you know, the investment worthwhile. And it does require having, you know, a physical infrastructure. There's a lot of stuff that we do that is either challenging or impossible from even a very nice home studio. And so what I'm interested in now, I mean, Kito, we should catch up sometime about this in the future, but you know, how do we build out a studio that works in this hybrid model? I have a number of composers, creative directors, sound designers, engineers that want to remain remote, but are willing, you know, assuming everyone is safe and secure around the virus, to come in for a day or two of the week. And that can be FaceTime and meetings with peers and colleagues or clients, but it could also, you know, just be to come in and track drums, or do a surround mix that they don't have the setup, or mix through a really nice console, or utilize, you know, some other type of gear. So I haven't figured that out yet, but I'm excited about the challenge of building out spaces that have, you know, that are easy to access and come in and out of, but have all of the tools and you know, advantages that you might not have even in a very nice and professional home studio.
One of the things as well, I think, from the hybrid world, which, you know, has tons of positives, you know, certainly from a personal employee perspective, let's say, one of the things that will be a challenge is how do you maintain that connection between artist and client, you know. So, you know, believe we're very much on the rights holder side of the sync equation. And so, you know, one of the key goals for us is for our artists to connect with our clients and with our you know, music supervision community in a meaningful way. There's only so many ways you can do that over the internet, right? And you have to figure out ways to make that sort of stuff more engaging. But, you know, there really isn't a substitute for putting someone in a room with a band or with an artist. And so, you know, there's certainly things that we can do in a more hybrid way, but that's definitely been a challenge. Is, you know, everybody misses live music. So how do you figure out a way to do that safely and sustainably?
Yeah, and especially the chemistry that goes when you're inside a room and you're talking and you're having ideas. I guess for mixing is something that really bothers me the remote way, because you have to sometimes one thing reacts to the other. So when you change something, you have the idea to change another thing. So it's really hard to do that working from home and online. But I think that we're gonna have to solve this way out together. Thinking about how we can deal with clients and with the staff team and artists, how we can communicate and integrate. I think that will be an ongoing challenge. And as with all this change from the health issues that we're gonna maybe open, close. I think that will be. We're gonna have to be smart in the next few years to solve this equation, at least here in Brazil. I'm gonna throw another ball here for you guys. How do you feel, or how was the creative side from this last 1 year and a half and 2 years? Did you feel that we have good opportunity in the creative work, or it was? How do you feel that was the kind of work that you did? Do you feel that compared to the previous years? Because in Brazil we had a kind of we run it creatively, but not that much. I think that we're working a lot, but I don't feel that all these constrictions have maybe affected some clients' expectations and willing for invest in new ideas. I would like to know, how do you guys feel about it?
Yeah, I can talk about that. This is a great question. I mean, taking a step back, even sort of, you know, just outside of our industry, I think when people are afraid and worried and scared, it's hard to make great art, right? It's harder to take risks, and that, like, ultimately that's what we're talking about. You know, we can say, you know, internally at ANTFOOD, are we pushing the boundaries as much as we can? We can say, are our production partners, our clients, our collaborators that we're working with, are the end clients, you know, as you say, willing to invest in something that might be more of a creative risk? And I think that even extends into sort of like strategic and tactical risks. I know, you know, Brazil's in slightly different, you know, situation financially, and if that's appropriate, I'd love to talk about that too. But I think what's interesting here in the States is that they, you know, just blew up like all of this money, and so there's just so much money floating around. And thinking about, well, you know, what are big companies really willing to invest in creatively. To more directly answer the first part of your question, I think it felt here, and I'm privy to the Brazilian market as well, that in the early days of the pandemic, there was a lot of this sort of closing inward and figuring out, well, what we were just like, okay, we're going to put down any live action stuff, we're going to put down big experiential in-person projects, we're going to focus on sonic branding, motion graphics, animation, that were still rolling, and we were able to really stay busy and successful throughout the pandemic. But we had to shift our focus, and I think there's sort of this creative and business survival mode that you get in. But I did feel, at least for us, we had creative projects, we had some opportunities, and often, they were underpaid or unpaid, but that we could really try to push, and flex our creative muscles. And, my vision is that you do those pieces that sort of open doors for other future opportunities that hopefully are, funded by clients. And so I really felt like I felt personally really successful that some of the projects that we did, they felt like these great big successes. We did a jazz quintet piece early in the pandemic for the New Yorker. And, it's like, how can you do this like authentic bebop without putting 5 people in the room? And, we did, it's just like we did the drums, isolated, then we got to play trumpet. And it was, sort of there was something that kind of hurt about going through that process in a less authentic way than we would have done in a previous time. But it did feel like there was a great, success in figuring out how to navigate that. And I certainly feel, this year we've grown a lot and been able to push some boundaries in creative. And yeah, I mean, I understand that, we're all sort of at different phases of how we're navigating the pandemic. And I mean, again, my take is like, I think, people can make great art in times of suffering and want and need. We've seen that throughout the course of human civilization. But in these moments where we're, our backs against the wall and we're uncertain, it is really hard to find that space and the confidence to take creative risks. So I hope gradually that will all come back. And maybe, hopefully it even sort of comes back with an explosion as we culturally get to a point where people are taking all of this pent up energy and demand and releasing it.
There is certainly a case. I think you've nailed a lot of points there. There was certainly a point for me, maybe 9 months ago, where I thought, if I hear another sad piano on an advert, I'm going to scream. There was this kind of business survival mode. I think a lot of clients, certainly in the advertising world, you hit back on things that are comforting, and one of the most comforting things you can find as a brand is a piece of recognizable music. So that was something we had to contend with at Believe. We're independent music, we're largely new music, we're breaking new acts, we're not sitting on a huge catalog of old hits. And so creatively, where a lot of people were going was to lean on that type of music. And so that was a challenge for us. How do you navigate that, a world where normally you're leaning on clients who are willing to take risks and do interesting new things. These people were understandably more cautious. So that was something we had to figure out. And I think more broadly in a music industry perspective, a really challenging thing is if you're a new artist or a new band setting out, how do you creatively engage your fans or your potential fans? You can't, we've already said, you can't go out there and you can't do live shows. There's only so many Zoom playbacks you can run. We saw people trying different things on Instagram Live or whatever it is. And that was really interesting and again, very challenging. How do you make sure that the art that you've made is adequately communicated to the public. And I think there was definitely some negatives in that, but also a lot of huge positives. And I think there's lots of music creators now who are engaged in creative ways of marketing their product, which is their releases. Those people wouldn't have been doing that before the pandemic, before their hand was forced. So there's positives and negatives, I think.
Yeah, I think that artists were forced to find a new way to reach their audience, and especially to grow, because now we are here we have three established companies, the people who are seasoned professionals that have been working for the past many years, and so does artists the same. But I think that for someone starting right now, or an artist or a company, it must be really quite a challenge to reach and to find clients, to find audience, to find establish new relationship with agencies, because we kept our relationship through the pandemic, so we were able to work. But as you were mentioning, I was thinking about it's quite a challenge now for an artist start to work. I think that's you mentioned a pretty cool way that we have gone through that. But how do you guys think that someone can start right now? A company, an artist, or production service, how that could be made in the situation that we are now?
Personally, I think there's still a lot of opportunity out there. The people that really struggled, during lockdowns and things, were the people that tried to hold on to those traditional ways of doing business. I think, and that's not, I don't mean that in a pejorative sense. We've had bands who were about to put their album out in March 2020, and their entire campaign was based around a live tour, and they were going to create a great buzz because of live. Who could plan for that not happening? No one. So, but the people that have managed to navigate that time have embraced those new technologies and those new opportunities. And I think there's lots of emerging markets now. Certainly when we talk about sync, Brazil is one of them. If you look at the rise of Netflix and Disney Plus and the other video on demand services in Brazil, that's a huge market for sync that didn't exist 2 or 3 years ago, really. The music supervision community in Brazil is, I'm reliably told, has never been busier. So I think if you're an artist or a company that's in that area, yes, there are challenges, but it's really about figuring out a way to get into what is essentially an emerging and new market. So, how do you approach that? I'd say the same ways as you always would be. I mean, certainly at Believe, we're really interested in those markets that are not fully mature, and that we can get in at the ground level and help to sort of be involved in the conversation of what does sync look like in TV for Brazil. We're moving away from the telenovelas. Great. What does sync look like in Indonesia? What does it look like in the Philippines? These are really interesting.
The cool thing is that it, in a sense, it closed one door, but it opened a bunch of others.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. With everything Pete and Kito, the analogy. I think in many ways that we look at it at face value and we say, this global pandemic, it changes a lot of things. But I think what more likely we're going to look back in 20 years or 50 years is say that it just accelerated things that were inevitable, that were going to happen, right? And just pushed them forward a little bit to significantly faster than they were going to happen. And so, I think for a new artist, for a new production company, a new entrepreneur, a new innovator, there are potentially like huge opportunities that might not have have been available to them. We have limitations, but also this is a blip. This is a year or two. There are probably talented people out there that are doing the work, right? Like I'm all about the work. It's maybe sort of a different model, but like I think that there are more platforms, there are more eyeballs and ears on different media in such a diverse array of media distribution than any time. I mean, by exponential factors than any time in human history, including 6 months ago. And next 6 months, 6 months from now, that's going to be even more. I'd love to talk about Brazil. I lived in Brazil for a few years. I've spent a ton of time in Brazil. My, partners always will say, Wilson, ele não entende Brazil. But if you'll bear with me, I feel like I'm very like optimistic, and I know, there are, a number of dark forces in the industry and abroad, but Brazil is a massive country that I think is the most analogous country to the United States of America and have, sort of a shared history and aspiration. It's full of incredible, talented people. And I think, from a logistical level, we suffer from the kind of, limitations of really our governments and our treaties in terms of how we can collaborate and compensate people broadly. But I think what I see, what I hope and I see happening, maybe not this year, maybe not even in 5 years, but over the next 10 years, there will be like, there already is, but sort of a very massive shift away from like everybody, is like global centric, right, to a number of different platforms that have all kinds of different diverse audiences and are monetized in a better way than they are now. And so my take on like music and sound, but I hope this applies for all of you, visual production company people out there, that there's great opportunity in finding what are those new areas that can be important to other human beings, whether it's content, whether it's advertising, marketing, branding. And I see what I hope we can figure out in sort of this new, not just economy, but realm of collaboration is having an easier way to, work together, work on different projects that are global. I think that this, Zoom culture has sort of leveled the playing field. Everybody wants, to your point, people in a time of need, they want to work with satellite, right? Because they know you, they trust you, you're a known quantity. And back to our previous thing, they don't want to take the risk. But at some point in the near future, there's going to be an opening for people to try out new things and to the push the boundaries in all of these open doors. And so I hope, we can all find a way that, like, in terms of talent in Brazil, in terms of clients, in terms of working globally, whatever that looks like, that we can all share the responsibility and the gain from all of that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Is it tough to run? I totally agree, and I think that you brought something that I guess that there's an optimistic, there's a bright future, I think, and especially when you consider that we have an increase of budget for advertising and a huge increase in streaming, as Pete mentioned, that this, and I think that we are seeing like a fast forward, like Wilson said. I guess that in this 2 years we have run like 7 or 10 years of digitalization, or kind of online business and models of how to reach audience and do business. And I think that probably we might have a bright future ahead. What are your guys' vision on this point?
I want to pass. I'll say a quick thing. I want to pass it off to Pete because it's maybe more, or maybe he's in a position to better capitalize on this. But I think one thing that's fun about that you just reminded me is, like, clearly, like, I have decks that that have some metric or statistic on this, but there is by far more money invested on music for marketing purposes than ever before by far. And the problem is that it's divided up in 4,000 different little ways, right? So we do have, we have this great opportunity, but we have sort of a different solution that we need to figure out. Well, how do you navigate that world? I don't know. Maybe it's related to you, Pete, but I'll pass that off to you. Yeah.
Yeah, that is almost exactly what I was going to say. I think there is an entirely new way of doing sync now, and I think the world of advertising broadly has gone from the huge global TV campaign down to the huge territory by territory TV campaign, down to, okay, well, let's run a TV campaign in one country, to hold on, we need to run a TikTok campaign every day with different productions every day of the week. And what that means is exactly what you just said, Wilson, is that there's more money now being spent on productions and on music than probably ever before. The issue is, how do we, from the artist perspective and a record label perspective, how do you facilitate that, right? So there's probably, I don't have the stats on this, but my guess is that yes, there's lots more licensing happening. Is that going to the labels and the publishers? Probably not. It's probably going to the library music companies and the bespoke companies. So one of the challenges and one of the interesting things is, how do you do music licensing and creative sync licensing in a world that moves 10 times quicker than it did 5 years ago? How do you make sure that your artists are ready to approve uses up front or in advance of creative coming in? How do you make sure that your local teams are doing the right work with the right people on the ground in order to help facilitate those creative conversations and those licensing conversations? And that's all the interesting stuff that we're doing right now, and the pandemic has probably, like we just said, has probably accelerated a lot of those things. But going forward, I'm extremely optimistic. I think the future of music licensing, much like the future of advertising, in my view, is going to be increasingly local and increasingly targeted. And so, and by that I mean, we advertisers, TV shows, whatever, all of these people are targeting much more specific demographics and doing it much more effectively. And so from our side, from a rights holder perspective, we have to be able to tap into that, and the great thing is we have the data these days. You can see who's listening to what artist, you can see which people are engaging with which types of music, and all of that stuff can feed into the creative conversation and therefore the licensing conversation. And again, I keep bringing it back to, a country like Brazil. It's really interesting. It's really, really exciting. My experience of doing sync licensing in Brazil for the past 10 years has been largely, you find a huge copyright and you put it on an advert and maybe there's a cover version of it or something, but there was not tons of opportunities for emerging musicians, certainly not emerging musicians from, the UK or Europe. That's changing. And so, for all of those reasons, I think it's going to be an exciting few years.
Wow, cool. Good to know that we are with hope and seeing a good future ahead. Now, unfortunately, the time flies here, and we're gonna have to end up this conversation. We'd love to have this conversation for hours with you guys. It will be really cool because there are many things to touch upon and to exchange our experiences. And I will really thank you guys for joining us here. Pete and Wilson, thank you very much. You guys said something that will really, I guess, inspire and ring a bell here for us to keep working and joining our forces around the globe to keep on doing what we have been doing. if you have any final messages, I'll leave it to you guys. If you want to say something, just closing here.
Just thanks for having us, I think, and you know, for anybody who's out there listening in, please feel free to get in touch. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, same here. Thank you, Mari, and everyone for having me. And I really mean it. I know there's this o país do futuro thing, but I'm attuned to the work and the market, and it's fantastic. And I think we should all look for opportunities to figure out how the talent and the execution can expand outward. And I think it's there are limitations in a dark time, but what's exciting for me is I think we will come out of this, and we'll come out of it changed, hopefully for the better. So I wish everyone the best of luck, and thanks for having us, Kito.
Cool, thanks Pete, thank Wilson. I guess that it was a good way to live in at this point. Thanks, guys.
Tchau, gente.
Cool. Take care.